It is not random distraction. It is a control response. The urge you feel to leave this alone, check your phone, doubt the tone, suddenly get tired, or tell yourself this is too intense is not a side effect. It is the subject. The reaction is the file. The reflex is the evidence. You know the sensation. That pressure behind your sternum when a sentence lands too clean. The tight flicker in the stomach when a message seems aimed at something you have kept hidden even from yourself. The heat behind the eyes. The pulse shift. The dry swallow. The micro-impulse to reach for another tab, another screen, another noise source before the thought can finish forming. Sometimes it is not fear. It is sleepiness. Sudden, chemical, heavy. Your jaw slackens. Your focus blurs. A fog rolls across attention as if some background process just consumed all available bandwidth. That is not always pathology. Anecdotal, thousands report this exact body-level skip reflex when certain ideas, people, or moments begin to challenge the self they have stabilized around. If we model it technically, it behaves like an internal firewall blocking identity-threatening data before it can gain root access. And the enemy is not merely outside you. That is the first trap. It is too easy to blame a demon, an institution, a parasite, and remain passive. The deeper mechanism is colder than that. The distraction-conditioned ego defense system. An internalized authority program. A behavioral algorithm trained through repetition, reward, overstimulation, and fear of destabilization. It auto-routes your attention back into familiar loops the moment unfamiliar truth begins to load. The archons, in traditional Gnostic language, represent forces that preserve the illusion and keep consciousness fixated on lower signals. Traditional, but in your daily life, those forces often operate through ordinary channels: conditioning, noise, reaction, interruption, compulsion. This is why the modern world feels so loud. Endless notifications. Endless content. Endless frictionless escape routes. The system no longer needs chains when it can hijack bandwidth. It does not need to silence every truth. It only needs to train you to scroll at the exact second truth begins to sting. And there is a key hidden inside that sting. Not a belief. A method. A recognition override. A precise response for the moment resistance activates. A way to catch the skip reflex in real time, identify which trigger state is online, and convert that reflex from an escape hatch into a doorway. But if I hand you the key before the mechanism is clear, you will misuse it. You will romanticize every discomfort. You will call every anxiety a revelation. You will mistake noise for signal. So the law here is simple. First the mechanism. Then the override. If this irritates you and pulls you at the same time, pay attention. That contradiction matters. Anecdotal, true recognition often arrives with a split response, aversion in the body, resonance underneath it. The surface self resists. Something deeper leans forward. If that is happening now, you are not casual audience. You are in a recognition window. Your current identity is being challenged by data it cannot easily absorb. And before this window closes, you need the diagnostic model. There are 4 trigger states in this framework. Unverified, treat them as an operating model, not laboratory fact. First, vibrational threshold. In practical terms, your nervous system is nearing a level of honesty, change, or self-contact that your old habits cannot comfortably host. Second, belief collapse. A core assumption is fracturing, and the mind launches defense to preserve continuity. Third, dormant memory surfacing. Not necessarily literal past life footage. Sometimes it is pattern recognition so old, so familiar, that it feels like remembering rather than learning. Fourth, ego panic. The identity structure detects loss of control and deploys distraction, skepticism, fatigue, or agitation like emergency countermeasures. One of those states may be active in you right now. Not all at once. Not always cleanly. But one is usually dominant. And until you understand why the body reacts before the mind can explain, you will keep obeying the reflex that blocks the very material you claim to seek. The old chambers understood this. Picture the stone room. Torchlight breathing against carved walls. Air cool enough to sharpen the skin. The ibis image cut into granite. Silence not as peace, but as pressure. An initiate enters the chamber expecting instruction and receives interruption instead. Not because the teachers have nothing to say, but because true initiation is not the transfer of comforting information. It is the destabilization that precedes new perception. Traditional, ancient Hermetic traditions frame awakening not as emotional sedation, but as transmutation. First, the old structure heats. Then it fractures. Then vision reorganizes. This is the layer most people skip because it is less flattering than fantasy. Wisdom traditions do not begin by making you feel special. They begin by exposing how mechanical you are. How predictable. How easy it is to govern a mind that mistakes every impulse for a command. In the symbolic archive of Egypt, Thoth is not merely a god to be adored. Traditional, he functions as recorder, measurer, technician of order, keeper of hidden law. He represents intelligence that maps the relationship between signal and form, pattern and consequence, thought and manifestation. In modern language, he is closer to a systems architect than a distant deity. A consciousness engineer. A keeper of protocols. And those protocols are not centered on spectacle. This matters. Guidance in these traditions does not always arrive as lightning in the skull. Often it enters through ordinary channels the personality is trained to ignore. A phrase that lingers long after you hear it. A piece of content you almost skip. A chance sentence repeated by two strangers in one day. A symbol that recurs across unrelated contexts. A wave of body tension attached to one specific topic while everything else passes cleanly. Traditional, Hermetic practitioners taught that subtle pattern recognition is part of disciplined perception, not superstition. The temple chamber, then, is also your present life. The glowing screen. The overworked nervous system. The interrupted attention span. The constant trade of silence for stimulation. The chamber is now digital. The test remains the same. Can you remain present long enough for a destabilizing signal to finish downloading, or do you abort the process the second your internal firewall throws an alert? The suppression method evolves, but the logic stays intact. Once authority structures learn that direct self-recognition makes human beings harder to govern, they do not need to destroy every teaching. They only need to bury it under excess. Externally sourced certainty. Endless commentary. Endless reactive content. Endless opinions that keep you consuming interpretation instead of encountering your own signal. The distraction-conditioned ego defense system becomes socially reinforced. Your inner firewall and the outer algorithm begin to cooperate. This is why so many people report a strange pattern. Anecdotal, the meaningful book arrives when they are in upheaval. The phrase keeps returning after they dismiss it. The relationship, career path, or identity they relied on starts to feel airless. Routine rewards no longer satisfy. Social roles detach. Synchronicity clusters intensify.